Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on the fascinating world of near-death experiences, spirit communication, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today for Magic is Real. I am Shannon Torrance. I'm a medium, and I'm somebody that is passionate about all things spiritual journeys, metaphysical, and I'm here to share that with you. And today I have with me my guest, Katharine Branham, who is a psychic medium, but she's not just a psychic medium. She is a free-flowing psychic medium, which I'll have her explain. She has been able to do this work since she was little. And I'm always so fascinated to meet natural mediums, I call them, who they don't know how it started. It just kind of started. And she's also the author of 3 books now. One is coming up, and I'm going to have her tell you all about the books, but her best-selling Amazon book is called How I Found My Superpowers. And I will have her tell you about the other ones because there is one that is coming out on October 7th that I am super excited to read. Welcome, Katharine. Thank you so much for being here. You have 3 books out that I want you to talk about. One of them is How I Found My Superpowers, and that is the story of how you discovered your abilities and came into this life as a free-flowing psychic medium, which we will talk about. You have another book, which is a workbook that accompanies that book. Can you show us that book, please?
Yes, it's called SelfHelp Slut, and it's starting with a clean slate. It's all about cleaning your energy field of any judgment that you have towards yourself and any judgment you have towards others. And it's also about being able to do some of the maintenance in your energy field that most people may say, oh, I've got to go to someone and get this done. It actually walks you through some of the very simple things that you can do that will empower your energy field and really power you up to be more accepting of your gifts. And for those that already know about their gifts, it helps them to deepen it.
Great. And then the book you have coming out on October 7th is called It Was Murder.
Right.
And what's the subtitle of that? It Was Murder, Nobody Knew. And
Yes.
I am fascinated and can't wait to read this because this is your compilation of stories about, tell us in your words, please.
It's about true life events where deceased loved ones came forward to tell someone that they did not die the way that it was marked on the death certificate or how they thought. They came forward to say they were murdered. And then they go into explaining what happened. So in a few of the stories there, it simply was, I didn't even know the people, and they just came forward and said, listen, they think I died of a heart attack, but this is what happened, and went into details. And I had one deceased person come forward and explain, dust the back window to the next to the back door. His fingerprints are there.
Wow.
And nobody would have thought to dust it. And she went on to explain who this person was to her. So there's going to be 4 books in that. There's 4 altogether because I can't get everything in one. So every chapter has several stories of different cases. And this one is the first one. And It Was Murder 2 will be following this for next year.
Wow, that's exciting. It mixes my 2 worlds together, my passion for true crime and my passion for spirituality. And I'm really excited to read it. So what I want to do is talk about, first of all, you are a free-flowing medium, which means that you don't have to go into a trance or set yourself up. You can just instantly connect with the spirit world, I assume through intention, or even, is it always through intention, or is it sometimes not even intentional?
No, it's actually not intentional. So sometimes when I'm just overhearing a conversation, like if you're at the grocery store and you're checking out and there's a couple talking, if someone states a question, I hear an answer. So usually when I have a session with someone, I will say, have your questions ready, because It's not something that I have to sit and meditate on. As soon as they hear the answer, as soon as they say the question, I hear the answer. And a lot of times I will parrot exactly what their guides are saying. So their spirit guides will either be saying, I'll say, they're saying this, or their higher self. So it's very easy to hear the answer. And a lot of times I will hear answers to things I don't really want to know the answer on, and
Yeah.
not with the client, just out and about. I will hear certain things like, oh, I wish I hadn't heard that. Um,
Yeah. That's a big responsibility.
yeah, it used to bother me quite a bit when I was younger, and I would hear something that was going to happen to someone, or I knew something was going to happen. But over the years, I've come to realize there's nothing I can do to prevent that, because most of the time people don't want to hear what's going to happen. They don't want to hear how they can prevent their passing. They would just rather not know.
Yeah. I can understand that. When I was reading up on you, I was thinking, I wonder if I would want to know certain things. And I'm like, part of me just likes the not knowing and the adventure of it, of what's going to happen next, and can I change the course of things? But we will get to that because I listened to an interview that you did that I thought was really interesting. First, I'm just going to take everyone back to when you were a child, and this is when you didn't know that anything was different about you, but you slowly had to learn that not everybody was seeing what you were seeing and receiving the type of information that you were seeing. Why would you? You're a child. So, can you take us back? What were some of the things you remember about being a child and how spirit interacted with you?
Well, when I was a small child, my mother used to punish me by putting me in a closet, and the closet was very small. And so during the time in the closet, I would see these people come in, and they were actually spirits. So I would have one lady come in and she would pet my hair, and
Oh.
I would feel as though I'm falling asleep on her. But over the course of the years, they would eventually come to stand next to the bed while I was sleeping. And I never was afraid of them. I just didn't really give them any thought. I just thought they were there and that was it. But it wasn't until a dance recital. I was about to go on stage to go get my trophy, and they were lining us up. And this woman starts screaming frantically. She was told her granddaughter walked out the back door and got into someone's car, and the woman was frantic. She couldn't breathe. She was hyperventilating. There was a lot of screaming. All of a sudden, I see her fall back, and I put my arms out to catch her. She, of course, was a lot bigger than me at the time, so I barely broke her fall. But when she fell back on me, I watched her soul go, and my mom pulls me off to the side, and I said, Mom, she just went to heaven. She just left. And Mom said, no, no, she didn't. The paramedics, they're going to load her up on a stretcher. She's going to be fine. They're going to take her to the hospital. She'll be just fine. Now you clean yourself up, and your dad's out there recording. I don't want him recording you crying. And I thought she didn't see him. And then I'm looking around at the people, and they're still watching the grandmother getting loaded on the stretcher and carried off. So I thought, no one saw. There's no soul in that body. But when I noticed her soul leave, she was no longer frantic. She no longer seemed to be worried about the granddaughter.
And what
And
did she look like? Was she transparent? Did she just look like herself? Did you
she
see her?
she
Yeah.
actually she looked like herself. She looked like the spirit version of herself. And the spirit version of someone is just without the density of the human body,
Mhm.
the heaviness of it. But she looked exactly like she did at that moment. But when people cross into the light, they can usually choose to be any age they want. So I knew she wouldn't be looking like that for very long, but she was going right to the light.
Right.
So she wasn't going to be a ghost that lingered around.
Right. Actually, that's a good question. Do ghosts, spirits
Yeah,
linger around?
they do if they don't go into the light. So in the book, it was murder. There's one case in there where two individuals died within a few minutes of each other. One went into the light and the other one stayed because they were too afraid to cross into the light because of what would happen on the other side. And because of our human teachings here on earth, many churches have chosen to teach fire and brimstone to scare people into tactics. Many of them, such as the Catholic Church that has believed, teaching purgatory and all that. There's not any of that. Hell is what we make. Hell is what humanity makes for themselves. And some of that hell gets experienced while they're here during this lifetime. And so those experiences aren't to be, when people say they've had a near-death experience and they saw hell, well, that was their higher self setting up that experience so they could change the way they're living here. But that's not the true side once people cross. I was taken across, I've gone across a few times to take people over, but I was taken across unexpectedly one night, and I talk about it in the book, How I Found My Superpowers. It really freaked me out because I was so cold. It felt like I was standing in a freezer or in Colorado on the coldest day with no jacket. And when I went across, my guides were all there and they were showing me different things on the other side. And my dad said, "Oh, you're here. I'm so glad to see you." And the guide said, "She's not here. We're just showing her this for this moment." And he said, "Oh,
Wow.
I'm so glad to see you." And then they put this light blanket over me. And it wasn't a blanket like we would think of a blanket. It was just like a sheet of light that they made over me. And I thought, okay, I'm fine now. I can pay attention. I'm not so cold that I can't pay attention. But there's so much happiness there. So when people are teaching fire and brimstone and all these things, it's nothing like that. And that's the one message that I want to share through all of my books is exactly the accountability of what these souls have gone through. And some of the things that I've learned through them weren't things I would have ever chosen to learn. This is not the career I would have chosen for myself. I kept trying
Right.
to do all these other things, and Spirit had another destination for me, and every door kept closing until I was just like, okay, I'm broken. What do I do? What do you want me to do? This is what you're going to do.
And they told you.
Yeah, they told me.
Now, you have the ability to see someone's life from conception until their passing when you sit with them, correct?
Well, I see it anyway without sitting with them.
Okay.
If I know, there's different people out there who are who claim to be mediums, and
Mhm.
when I am with someone and I don't see something, I will tell them, I just don't see this for you.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
I will only tell them what I see. But on the flip side, if they're asking me about their life, what do you see for me in 2 years? I'm not going to make anything up. If
Right.
I see them there in 2 years, I will say, you need to get your affairs in order.
Right.
But I will only tell people that are coming to me that know they're ill or this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, for that, I usually will not take people that I see are not going to be around in 5 years. I won't even
Right.
for them.
Right. And so when you're doing a reading for your clients, yeah, obviously that's a huge responsibility because it may not be in their best interest to know that they're going to pass away in 3 years, and that's just going to depress them and make them feel panicky. When really they might have more to do, and you want them to be present in the world they're in. So, as I heard you say in another interview and just now, it's more that you kind of tweak I'm going to say suggestions for how to navigate whatever specific path they are on. And I'd love to know how you perceive the information. So, say I'm a client, I'm sitting across from you. Is it all just claircognizance where you just know it all? Do you hear your guides and their guides talking? Um, and how do your senses perceive the information?
Well, I don't like my voice box to be used. So
Mhm.
I will not let them do this, but I will pick up a pen and I keep a pad of paper. So as they're talking, I will write something and I won't pay attention what's written until the client says, "What do you think about that?" And then I look at the notes and then I hold the notes up to the screen so they can
Ah,
see it's just written. But when I'm reading for someone, I only rely on their guides, their deceased loved ones, and their angels. My guides only step in when they're telling me, don't say this,
Mm-hmm.
or you need to tell them this. My guides only step in to corral me, to pull
Yeah.
me back. They never step in for the other person. And when I am reading for someone that I know this is something they need to go get looked at, I will say, you need to go get this checked out. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had a guy that came to me, very young guy, and they were showing me his colon, because I really learned my basis through medical intuition. That's my forte. And so I would do body charts for doctors and medical staff. So what I saw in his energy field, he didn't come to me for a health reading. He came to me for a relationship. And I answered his question. And I said, the one thing that's standing out to me is your colon. You need to go get that checked out. So I said, well, funny you should say that. I have had some issues. I said, you need to go get a colonoscopy. This is what you need to do. So we get off the call, and my guide said he's not going to go get one. He went to the doctor, and the doctor said, oh, I'll check you out, but you don't need a colonoscopy. You're too young. The guy comes back to me and says, he told me I'm fine. I said, listen, I'm telling you right now, for your colon to look like this to me, it's like stage 3 or 4. Go get a colonoscopy. And he got off the phone with me, and I said, you need to get someone in, like, emergency. So tell him it's an emergency. He got in, they found it there. He was living on his own in another state. I said, part of this happening is so you can rebuild things with your family, because when you moved, it ended badly. You're going to go back to your home state. You're going to get treatment. You're going to be fine. And during that time period, you're going to rebuild the relationship with your family. That's why this has happened. It's so your family can find acceptance with you and you with them. And once you do that, it's going to be in remission. You're going to be fine. Well,
Oh,
that's
wow.
exactly what happened. Because with certain battles that we undertake in this lifetime, there's things to learn with it. And that always gets back to self-acceptance or acceptance of another. And that's
Right.
what this was. And so if the guides are saying, get a colonoscopy, you don't go to a doctor and the doctor's going to tell you, oh no, you don't need one. You go friggin' get one,
Yeah.
and do it now. But I've had a couple of situations where people have come in with medical issues, and I've said, look, I see you as a 80-year-old person. So I know you're going to overcome this. And that's really
Right.
all they needed to hear. They're like, okay, I got this. I'm going to overcome it.
That's right. I remember you saying that in another interview that it's more like you see the end. So it's
Yeah.
not necessarily like you need to say you're going to get a divorce. You're just
Yes.
like, you're going to, whatever, be married or not married by the time you're 75 or whatever it is, so that you're just kind of looking at the end of the road.
Yes.
And how can we navigate that along the way? Because we have free will. And that was something I wanted to ask you too. How does free will play into all of this, barring medical things or things like that that are just your path because your soul chose that to learn from?
Well, I want to give my mom as an example here,
Mhm.
because I don't have a client that I've actually asked permission for. My mother's last contract here on earth was accepting love in every direction, which meant not just love between you and a partner, but accepting love with a pet, or accepting love with a family member, where you're okay with your mother-in-law living with you, or you're okay watching, your brother's dog for 2 days. There is a real difference with self-acceptance and acceptance of others. She was having a struggling time learning love in every direction. And I was the first one she was supposed to learn that with. And she never learned it with me. When she finally accepted me in her last several years of life, she became my biggest fan.
Hmm.
But prior to that, she wasn't. But still, she had other people she had to work things out with. The last contract she had was with her mother-in-law, accepting the fact that she needed to live with her for a short time and accepting it. Instead, she fought it. And when we keep giving lessons over and over, and they all have like that same theme to it, that's a lesson that we need to overcome. And you can't just look at it and say, I keep dating all these lousy guys, but they're all the same type of guys. Why can't I have a great guy? Well, you can't have a great guy until you understand what you need to overcome with it, which is you're devaluing yourself. You've already marked your value down, and you're going right back into the slums of dating someone that's a lower frequency than you.
Right.
When we finally overcome certain lessons, we'll stop being given that lesson. And it's like, wow, it's almost like through the ethers, you can feel this wonderful vibrational frequency go, I've arrived and I made it.
Yep. That
Kind of
makes
go
sense.
down the line to your next thing that you're here to learn.
Right. And are you able to use these abilities to help yourself to, I mean, how do you use them? How are you able to help yourself? Can you see your own path? I would assume not, but I'd love to know how that works for you.
I can't. But there's times that I'm like, I know this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, like in the book, my ex husband, we were working on this project, and we had a marketing firm. We were working on this project, and he brought home this really big check from this project we had been spending a lot of time in. And he's like, I know you said we're going to be millionaires before we're 30. I don't know how that's going to happen, but when you say something's going to happen, it always does. So, why don't we invest this in the market? And I'm like, I don't know anything about the stock market. He's like, maybe I'll show you a couple of things and you tell me which one you like. So he showed me this sheet where he wrote down, and I said, I like that one. It stood out, like it highlighted from the page. I'm like, that one. So he invested $60,000 into it. And before I turned 30, um, it hit 2.2 million.
Wow. That's something people always say. Well, if you're so psychic, why can't you pick the winning lottery numbers for yourself?
Well, most people don't even think to do that. So people
Right.
that are still like living in that mentality, yeah, because people that are walking their spiritual path, whatever it is you want, if you're doing what you're here to do, you're going to get it. Because the times where I wasn't doing what spirit wanted me to do, I felt the wrath, because it wasn't like he was punishing me, but
Yeah. I know.
no door would open.
I get
You
that.
I wanted to move to another state. That opportunity would not open up for me. And as I'm sitting there going, crap, this is really what I wanted. Because I'm here having a human experience. All of us here are having a human experience. I'm going, crap, I really wanted to move to that state. The phone rings, and it's this woman telling me a friend of mine had given her my number. She needs my help. Her daughter is going through this, and this, and everybody else is giving up on her. Can I help her? And I'm like, yes. So I'm sitting there on the curb going, because I'm sitting here with the moving truck. Okay, here's what you're going to do. And told her what was going to happen. And after she happened to be a nurse. And after that, it was like word spread through the hospital and I was like, overnight, I was packed 7 days a week with business. And I'm like, okay, God, I wanted to move to another state. I wanted to maybe sell real estate. And here I'm doing this. I'm just going to do it. I mean, you've got plans for me. I'm feeding my kids, I'm able to do this. So I guess I'll do this for a while. And every time I felt like I wanted to give up because there were some readings that were horrible to see. And I would, after leave the reading, I would just be in tears after what I had witnessed. I would think, I just don't want to do this anymore. And then the next day I'd log into the computer and it would be a letter, an email from someone that they would say, there was something that I did that changed their life. And to me, that kept me going. So every time it was like, okay, I just can't do this anymore. And that's what happened, when I was watching what was going to happen, I saw the bodies in the bags, and I saw what tuned me into it were a few of the doctors that I read for. I never see them break. And I was seeing them break down I'm like, that's nerve wracking. It's just like when you're on a plane and it's a little bit of turbulence, but once you see the airline stewardess buckle in, you're like, oh shit, and then you're gripping your seat. Um, and so when I witnessed that, I just hit my knees again. And I said, God, I can see these things, but how come I can't help more people than what I've been able to help? So I thought after this, you know what? I feel like I've done it for enough years. I want to go teach tap. I'm going to go do something, work in a restaurant, teach tap dancing again, do something fun. Um, and then at the time I was working with this amazing man who had served 21 years in the US Army and was incarcerated. He had done everything in awakening and opening up to his path. He said, you know what? All those notes you've been taking over the years, I'm publishing your book.
Wow.
And he said, get it ready. So I sat down and I said, this is a miracle because I just said I didn't want to do this anymore. God, how can I help more people? And then Major Austin Hart says, I'm going to publish your book. So I sat down and I said, okay, what stories do I need to put in? What experience do I need to put in that would help people? And every one of them were hand selected by spirit. There was a lot I could have put on the in between of certain situations, but what I was guided to was the information that I put in there was enough to help people to understand the spirit world without giving them too much to where they walk away going, gosh, it just seems like so much to take in.
Yeah.
And everything else has been broken up over the workbook and the other stuff that would help people in learning about the spirit world and understanding that you don't have to be born a title of a medium, because everybody walking the planet has abilities. It's just that they've casted themselves so far from who they really are in the light of God and spirit that they've taken that away from themselves. And we've got to get everybody back, so I've met so many wonderful brothers and sisters on the way, on this path. And I seriously love everyone. And when they message me and go, I'm awakening like you told me I would, I've been doing this, I'm like, oh, thank God, you can make
Yeah.
it.
I know. It's like you want it for everyone because you think what could be accomplished in terms of creating more peace and harmony and love and communication and all of the things. And
Yep.
yet, you know, the uh the fact that there's so many people that are at in different places, I'll just say, on different paths. That's kind of what we're all here to do, is help navigate all of the different paths and learn to accept one another and learn from one another. It's a lot. Now, I would love to know too, when this must get, I would assume, because you don't have, like you said, you don't, like when I do a mediumship reading, because I am not somebody who realized she was a medium until later, and then actually intended to do it. I studied it, I learned the art of it. And as you said, some people, that what they always say is some people play piano, but are they going to be Chopin?
Right.
No, like, and like you just do this automatically. I do go into the meditation. I still work on sifting out my own thoughts. Fortunately enough comes through that I always tell my clients, look, some of this just might be my own, my own stuff, but we'll get through that. And then, we focus on what resonates. How do you personally set boundaries energetically for yourself? Because this would get very overwhelming, I would assume, to go out in the world and be able to essentially, I know you might not say it's reading minds, but I guess it kind of is, because you can tell everyone's story. And like you said, sometimes you just want to be normal. You're like, I just want to be a tap teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to teach tap. I want to do shuffle ball change. Um,
Yeah.
it is difficult at times. There's some days where I say, okay, I just want to go out and have a good day, kind of get lost in the day somewhere. So I do have those days, that I can't do anything this morning. I don't feel like I'll be any use to anyone. And I
Mhm.
go get my battery charged somewhere, like at the park or with the dogs with Frisbee. And when I'm able to come back, I feel much more refreshed. I love yard work. So I spend a lot of time doing yard work and with animals. And that really recharges my battery. But when it comes to being near someone or someone touching me, I have difficulty with, not in a Howard Hughes way.
Mm-hmm.
But an example would be getting a facial. If I was to get a
Oh
facial,
yeah.
I can read them. I've met dental hygienists because they're in my mouth, they're cleaning. And I always tend to get people that need the message. And so if they're touching me and they're not asking me questions, like their life starts flashing to me, things that they're doing currently, their relationship, their intimate encounters, everything starts coming through if they touch me. So I usually don't want to be somewhere where I'm going to be touched or in close proximity, not
Oh
because
yeah.
of germs, but because I don't want to read people. And so some tasks that would be very enjoyable, like getting a massage, that's torture to me.
Oh yeah. What a bummer. Massages are my favorite thing in life.
I know that's on my list to try to conquer, is like to be able to calm. But when the massage person, when the therapist comes up, it's like I scan them now a little bit to make sure there's nothing too toxic in their life and go, oh, she's perfect.
Yeah.
You so had a facial and I took a glance over through her and I'm like, she's very judgmental, but she's a good person. She doesn't do anything wrong. So come on, let's go.
Yeah.
But you never know what you're going to get. And so those are the difficult times, is finding enjoyment and still like understanding I'm not crossing boundaries, but sometimes things just come up, especially if they touch me.
Yeah, I wonder that too with friends and people that your friends and family, how that affects your social interactions. Like if you just want to have lunch with your friends, um, but you probably already know them enough by now, I would
Yeah.
assume, where you already know their story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's the answer. But how would you answer that?
They I've read for various ones for various situations.
Yeah.
They've had parents that they've lost, and the situations around a parent passing or a friend passing. But my true friends don't cross boundaries,
Right.
and so it is one of those things that I could be out with them, or at the store, and it's nothing, and if I'm somewhere and um, you know, someone says, well, what do you do? Oh, nothing, or I
Yeah.
do yard work.
I always
Next,
like I
yeah,
just say I have spiritual class like I'm a voice actor, so that's easy for me to just say that. But if and when I'm mentioning my jobs, I'll be like, and I have spiritual work that I do. I just don't go into what it is until I know that they're interested. Or just either they'll just go, uh-huh, or they'll go, oh, what kind of spiritual work do you do? And then you can kind of go into it. But it is, but like, unlike you, it doesn't have, I mean, sometimes information comes through when I'm not trying. Um, but it's very rare because for me, being newer at it and still honing that skill, I still do the whole unnecessary stuff that I do for me. I light the candles, I put on my crystals, I put on the music that gets me in the zone, and then I ask spirit to come in and I do the whole thing. And then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. But in a way, I wish I could just, I mean, I'm sure I can. I just think I lean on it as a crutch.
yeah.
I'm starting to go, Shannon, you don't need that. What if you just trust and just start reading, just do it. And I'm like, no, I need my crutch. But at the same time, I think it would be really interesting to just go, okay, I'm just, as Suzanne Giesman says, just shift, just shift. And the other thing that I wonder if this happens to you, do you still kind of experience knowing when things are going to happen to people you love and excuse me, and having to sort of navigate, do I say something? How do you navigate things like that when you see things for your friends or your family?
Well, for it's happened a few times with people that no one would have expected, because they were so young.
Yeah.
And I looked at them, and when I looked at them, their guide and my guide said they're not going to make it to adulthood. They won't make it to adulthood. So I knew they're going to die at 19.
Yeah.
They won't make it to the age of 20. And so there were times that I did tell my daughter, your friend's not going to make it to 20. And she said, Mom, don't say that. I said, that's what they're showing me. I don't see him as an adult. They said he won't make it to adult. So those type of situations have been difficult. When Spirit told me Mom would be leaving in 2 weeks, she was fine. And
Mm.
when he told me that, that whole week was jam packed with, those were 7-day work weeks. And some of those days I didn't get finished work until 10 p.m. at night, because you never know what you're going to go
Yeah.
into going into something and how long it's going to take. But I was on the phone with her, and I talk about it in the book, the conversation. And she says, so what do you see for 2020? You know, so as she's asking that, Spirit says she'll be leaving. No, I'd start telling her, and then she's like, oh no, am I going to be okay? And I
Oh,
was like, oh crap. But right as she said that, they said she'll be leaving in 2 weeks. And she left exactly on the 2-week mark. Um, but when I hear things like that, that was the only time that I basically had amnesia that week. It was like I was on autopilot. I was had everybody booked up. And then the day she passed, she called me and said, it was Good Friday. She said, hey, the kids are out of school today. And I said, yep, they don't have school. She said, are you working? I said, well, I have a couple of clients. She's like, oh, I wanted to come out there and see you guys. And I heard my guide say, call your clients and cancel, move them to next week and go have the day. And I went and had the day, and we had this awesome day. You couldn't have planned a better day.
mm.
And while we went to breakfast first, and while we were having breakfast, her guides came in and said, do you see what she's eating? Do you see this? And they were showing me everything. And then they were showing me her head. And I thought, I can't even focus on conversation, but most people that I'm in normal conversation with don't know my tell. I have this tell that the kids swear to God that I
They
have.
know. Yeah.
No, and they're always like, what'd you see, Lassie? What'd you see? Respectful, calling your mother Lassie. But they will say, what'd you see, Lassie? But then we went on to have this great day, and we went several different places, and I was driving, and everybody's piled into the Pathfinder. And we just had this great day. And then before she got ready to leave, she was sitting on the sofa, and my guide said, go up and look at her ears. And they were showing me markings on the ears, which I'm going to write about in the book coming up. But they were showing me different things, and they were talking to me at the same time. And then they said, tell her how you feel. This will be the last time you see her. And I said, I want to thank you for all the good times and the bad, because she tortured me in childhood.
Yeah.
She didn't like me, and she told me I was the biggest disappointment of her life. But I told her, I said, thank you for the good times and the bad. Thank you for teaching me things that I needed to be able to know to help other people. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing me forward and allowing me to incarnate during this time period, because I needed to be here. And she teared up and said, thank you for being my daughter.
Oh,
And thank you for being with me and teaching me about the spirit world when I didn't know anything about it. You've opened up a whole new world for me. You've changed the way I see life. And I put her earring back on her ear and walked her to the door, and I yelled up the stairs, Zach, come down and say goodbye to your grandma. And then I walked up the stairs, and I opened the door, and I looked at him. I said, you need to come say goodbye. This is going to be the last time you see her. He was playing video games at the time, and he didn't heed my warning. And so I walked outside, and I hugged her, and she was showing me this purse that she just got, this new Vera Bradley. And I hugged her, and I said, thank you. And she said, Ken promised me that he would drive me to see you more often. I know I need to see you more often because you teach me so much. And I just knew this was it. So I hugged her. And when I hugged her, I could feel, you know, I felt her energy deeper than before. But it was that I was able to give her the goodbye hug. And then the night just kind of like went on. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, my stepdad was banging on the door and he said, "What are you doing locking your door? You never lock your door." And I said, "I don't know, maybe somebody locked it by accident." And he said, "Your mom was taken to the hospital and I need you to, get your clothes on. We got to go." And I said, "Okay, give me a minute." I went upstairs because I had on my nightgown and mom is there. And she said, "There's no need for you to go to the hospital." She said, "I've already left my body. They took me onto the hospital. They tried to revive me, but they're waiting for the doctor to come in to give the family the option to take me off of life support and to say their goodbyes. They're giving the family option to say their goodbyes." I said, "Okay." So I said, "What do I do?" She said, "Don't go now. Just wait till morning because you're going to be sitting there doing nothing." I said, "Okay." I went down. I said, "I'm going to wait until 6 and then go." And he said, "I can't believe you're doing this. I'm going." So he left and I go upstairs and I pass out. I don't remember sitting on the bed. I just know I fell over on the bed. And perhaps it was so I didn't sit and talk to her. I don't know what it was, but um, the banging on the door again at 6. I came down. He's like, "You locked your door again?" I said, "I swear, I don't even know who locked the door. Maybe I locked it. I was half asleep." And he said, "The doctor wants to take her off of life support. Get dressed. We've got to go say our goodbyes." So I said, "Hold on. I'll go get dressed." So I went upstairs, got dressed, and we drove over there. And when I got to the entrance of the hospital, there was this giant amethyst crystal that was about 6.5 feet tall in their waiting area, like giant crystal. The hospital has it there.
That's amazing.
It's beautiful. So when I walk in and I see it, she's there and she says, "Come on, David's here," and she's like telling me different people that, and I sit down on the sofa and my stepdad said, "I'm going to go on up. I'm waiting on your sister to get here." So my brother and sister go on upstairs and I'm sitting there talking to my stepbrother and mom is still there. And I said, they're going up to say their goodbyes to you. Don't you want to go up there? And she's like, "Oh yeah." And so I said, "You and I will talk later." I'm
Yeah.
like, I didn't say it in a funny way. I'm just like, "Come on now, we'll talk later." So she goes on upstairs and I stay downstairs. And my stepbrother said, "You're not going to go upstairs?" I'm like, "No, because she's not there. I'll see her. And I've seen her so many times since.
That's what was going to be my next question is, I know that you had a complicated relationship with her, but if it's someone so close to you, you're still a human. There's still
Right,
grief involved.
right.
And yet you also have this knowing that this isn't the end, that I'm going to be able to communicate with them. And how do you perceive her when you have communication from her? Because I know most people will say, "Oh, I saw a feather or a bird or whatever." Do you actually see her
No,
spirit
I
and talk with that is so cool.
no, I see her. And what she did the first time that she came in, she's like, "Look, I'm like in Dora." I'm like, "Who's in Dora?" She's like, "From Bewitched." I'm like, "In Dora now. Look,
Oh,
I
that's
just."
so funny.
Yeah, and that was her reference point. So I'm like, I don't know. And then one day I fell and I'm laying on the cement calling 911, you know, because I couldn't stand up on my leg. And she says, she shows up and I'm like, "Am I dying? Why are you here?" And she
Yeah.
said, "Oh no, you're not dying. I just came in to check on you." So at that point, my neighbor comes out and he hears me say, "Am I dying? Am I going to die?" He's like, "Oh no, no, you'll be fine." Okay, I'm not talking to you. So she was actually, she wasn't with me in the ambulance, but she was with me at the hospital talking to me. And I talk about that in the book and what
Oh,
occurred.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's wonderful. I was just telling my dad, we went for a walk by ourselves, and he's pretty Well, I found out that he's a deist. He identifies more as a deist than anything. I always assumed he was an atheist. He's pretty conservative and logical. And so I had just been talking to my mom about all this and not telling him because I'm like, he's not going to know what to say about that. And finally, my mom was like, he's surprised that you think that, because he basically believes in what he sees. Like I don't know.
Right.
So I was explaining to him on our walk, like how this works and how I receive information. And I was like, and so I hope that he's like, but how do you do it? I'm like, this is how it works. And then I said, but I hope that somehow I'm not asking you to believe wholly, but that it makes you less afraid or not. I don't know that he's afraid or not, but I was like, I hope it brings you peace to know that this isn't all there is. And he's like, well, we'll see. Like, he's still like, but I just like the idea that I'm like, I know I don't want him to go anytime soon, but when the time comes, I do find comfort in knowing that we're going to have this very different relationship. That it's in some ways we've become very close since I moved to Virginia to be with them. But I'm like, yeah, I feel like it's going to be this really more connected because we're so different. And I think it's really interesting that we'll meet on a soul level instead of a human level, which I think is the gift in it. Even though, like I said, I'm not looking forward to that time at all, but I do think it does help ease the fear around it, the dread around it.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of your awakening now is or you're deepening into it because he does have fear uh about crossing. He does
Yeah,
have fear afterwards. So for him, it's better for him to look at it as though there's nothing
yeah,
rather
yeah,
than there's something. But once more of humanity lets go of the old idea of that fire and brimstone mentality that
yeah.
there is an acceptance level that you have to reach before being able to stay in heaven. Once they let go of that, there's going to be more people to awaken. It's just that it's so heavily ingrained in humanity that it's going to take a while for it to, because that's what they've based everything on. They've based it on, basically putting so much fear into everything to keep people so connected to the church and to keep them so weighted down where they won't awaken on their own.
I believe that with all my heart. I believe that's my personal belief. No disrespect to anyone who doesn't feel that way. Like as you said, touched on earlier, I believe that hell is of our own making. It's our own fears projected. That none of us are perfect. Some of us are worse than others, but we're all here to learn. And so there really is no measure of good or bad on the other side from what I believe. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. There's just no good or bad value to it. It's just stuff that happens, which sounds really heartless, but it isn't. And it's not something I talk about a lot just because I know it's hard for people to understand. And they're like, well, that's not a very nice, or that's sort of minimizing the horrible stuff, which I don't think it is, but I think it's hard to wrap our heads around that.
Right. And I've noticed with a few souls that I've encountered during soul school after someone's passing, their higher self will usually tend to experience pain that they've caused others. And I'm not talking about gaslighting someone or
Yeah.
ghosting someone, not those, but maybe the murder type of
Hmm.
scenarios or some of the abuse, the child abuse or things like that, what they've put others through. So, when I've had people come to me and say, their brother committed suicide, is he in heaven or is he in hell? I'll say, of course he's in heaven.
Yeah.
You know, uh, when someone does commit suicide, the sad part is they will have to come back and
Hmm.
uh, understand the obstacle that they were trying to avoid. And
Yep.
once you understand that obstacle, it's like, aha, it's like one of those angel moments. Oh, I made it. Uh,
Yeah.
get past it, because we all have things that occur in our lifetime where we think this is it, or you're really on your knees. What can I do? And it's those opportunities that we have to gain so much spiritual understanding. It's like we take a giant leap up, like in Candyland when you're playing the game. and you can cut through. It's like, this is a cut through moment. If you only understood, it's a cut through moment to
Yes.
bypass a lot more stuff.
That's so interesting. A really close friend of mine was, he's struggled with severe depression his whole life and was telling me about feeling suicidal, which is really difficult, as you know, as a friend. But at the same time, you know, he assured me, he's like, I'm not going anywhere because I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to do that to my family. But that's what I told him too. I said, I know it's hard. I'm so sorry that you suffer with this. I know it feels endless, but just know it's nothing bad will happen if you choose that path. I mean, you'll be okay. And I will be relieved for you. But I said, please stick around. I mean, because I love you, but also because you're just going to have to come do the karmic thing all over again. It's like you're just going to, until your soul gets the lesson, take what you have now, because better the devil you know. You know, who knows
Yeah.
what's going to happen next time around, you know, when you get that choice. So, again, not to minimize anyone's pain. I know it's a horrible state to live in, but for whatever reason, that's what that person has to deal with. And it's really unfortunate, but I know it's all part of the growth and the evolution that we're here to do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, when you think about having to do it all over again, remember you have to go through infancy, childhood,
Oh God.
adolescent.
Elementary school.
Right. Who wants that abuse? So at that point, you're just like, screw it. I'll just deal with this now instead of.
Love the one you're with. Just I was like, look, you only have like 30 years left. It's gonna be okay. I'm like, we'll get through it together. I personally want to live forever because I love this life, but I'm also not afraid of death now. And so I know that I'm grasping on because I have so much I want to do, but I'm also, when that time comes, looking forward to it. You know, whenever that may be. And what is it that you've said so many beautiful, wise things, but if there's one thing that you want people to know the most, what is that thing?
That the number one uh, blockage in humanity right now is self-acceptance. So whatever
Yes.
it is that you're holding on to within yourself, whether it's guilt or words that were spoken to you or a title that was given to you that's hurtful, the number one thing you can do is you know shed that, because shedding that belief is going to be the first step to your spiritual walk. Even if you think you've been on your spiritual path, nothing is more empowering than when you shed that and really look at the source of where it came from, and you shine light on that source, and you're like, you know, it was nothing. That's why I wrote the workbook. And I have had people look at the workbook and go, oh my gosh, look at that title. Well, it's all about releasing judgment. And if they're having that reaction to the title, they need the workbook more than anybody else.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That is so, so true. That's been on my mind a lot lately with the way that I've just been having these conversations around me having gone through a 12-step program and being an addict because I didn't love myself or value myself. And I really didn't know my own worth. And having gone through that, one thing I've learned the most is that it sounds cliche, but this is the truth. This is the thing I know. If you don't love yourself and like yourself, and I think I actually want to do a video on that because what does that mean? Like, how do you just love yourself? And it's a process, right? Like, I think we all still struggle no matter how evolved we are. And I feel for the first time in my life so much self love, so much self esteem, self confidence, self compassion. I like who I am. But that came after years and years and years of having to reinforce. Let's get to the root of what started that. Let's create a new story. Let's act with integrity so you don't have to feel shame, so you don't feel bad about yourself anymore. Let's be of service so that you feel good about you and know that that you have nothing to hide and nothing to apologize for because you're doing your best even when you mess up. And but until we do that, we can't have relationships with anyone else. We can't show up for anyone else wholly, honestly, because we're battling that thing inside of us. And so if we don't love ourselves, we can't love others the right way. And so that's something that is like a mission of mine too, which is what my book is about, that I'm writing. It's taking me forever. So I appreciate that sentiment so very much. Can you also, just to round this out, talk about, I know you've got a book coming out. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of things that you have coming up or services that you're providing now?
Well, I will be launching more classes that will
Okay.
be available online. And I will also be starting a forum in 2023 where we will meet once a month. And it's for those that are going through the workbook series. If there's questions that come up or things, we'll have like our own little powwow group that we'll be meeting up with. But the overall would be, if you know nothing about the spirit world, check out How I Found My Superpowers, because it does give you a good jump start. And then the workbook series, and there's 11 total that will be out. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, and you know, the murder book is amazing for the fact that we actually get the spiritual lesson that's connected to what happened. And so even though this situation's already occurred for those people, for those of us that are reading it, and like I had the privilege to meet the deceased afterwards or during that time period, it was interesting to me because I learned so much. And for years and years, I'd write down everything I learned because I thought, I want my kids to know this one day. I want my grandkids and their grandkids, and I want the family to know about it. And I was guided every time to write it down, write it down, write it down. So I have got like 5 to 6 feet stacks of situations that happened that I was just like, I got to write it. And so all of that's coming out. All those stories are coming out.
Oh,
That's
that's,
what I'm excited.
yeah, you have, I feel like you have such a, my dream career life. That you're diversifying in all these ways and getting to interact with the public um, and, do readings and do writing and and be a mother and do all this activism for animals. And it just all sounds beautiful to me. So thank you for sharing your heart, your insights, your experience with me and with the viewers and for connecting with me. You are such a beautiful soul, and I'm so glad to know you, and I'm so glad that we've connected. I just am so honored to have you on the show, and it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor. It was an honor to meet you. You're amazing.
You are too. Big hug.
Thank you.